thank God the Raptor game was on last night because there was no baseball to watch. I thought we were going to see both. I thought they're going to play every day this year, 162 consecutive days.
Just a minute. You are suggesting that the Raptor game was a positive last night?
No, but I had something to watch. I was hoping to watch more of the Blue Jays game because I'm more confident in their ability to keep me sane.
Oh.
But they actually took the night off, and they're in Boston tonight for a series against.
Well, the Raptors took the night off too, so it's okay.
Raptors took the first game off. They were a little better last night. Don't give up on them yet. But
we're going to talk more about we're going to talk more about basketball tomorrow.
Well, we will. And okay, I'll leave it then at your suggestion, John. I don't want to upset you. Baseball today. Our friend Shi Davidi will join us, and we'll dissect the first 10 games of the regular season after these messages. McCown and Shannon, we're back with you, and Shi Davidi of Sportsnet joins us. Has been feeling under the weather of late, and we presume feeling a little bit better now, Mr. Davidi, yes?
Significantly, yes.
Good. How to describe the first 10 days of the Blue Jays season? Pretty good in terms of record. I mean, they're in first place in the AL East. But if one looks at this group of which much is expected, there aren't a lot of real bright spots right now, and there are concerns in a lot of places. The starting pitching has been iffy, with the exception of Manoah, who's been brilliant both times out. Hyun-Jin Ryu is now on the DL. That's correct.
That's right.
And they're going to be a little tight on starting pitching. I guess they'll have to make some adjustments there over the next game or two that he will miss. Offensively, some good performances, but some we're waiting to see them emerge. Give me your overall sense of how they've gone. I mean, I would say they should be happy to be 6-4.
Yeah, I think that maybe that one game against Texas on the Sunday where they had the big lead early and gave that up. I think maybe that's a game you want back. It might have been one more game in New York that you could have maybe been able to grab. The Saturday against Oakland, that's a game they probably feel that they should have had and had a few things go against them. But look, I think if you're them, you're probably looking at this and saying, okay, well, we had 2.5 weeks through 3 weeks of spring training. Our starters are barely ready. They're still essentially in spring training mode. They can throw out maybe even the first 2.5 weeks of the season before we can really get a sense of where they're at. And, for the most part, aside from, Ryu, the pitching is healthy. The injuries to Teoscar Hernandez and Danny Jansen hurt. From what I've been told, the Blue Jays are expecting those to be shorter term as opposed to longer term for oblique injuries. But again, not great right now. So, I think 6-4 with everything that's happened and the way that it's happened, that's fine. But I think you would have, if you're the Blue Jays, you would have liked to see a little bit more going into this real meat grinder stretch where, you've got 2 weeks against the Yankees, Red Sox, and Astros, where you're really going to get tested.
So yeah, the pitching, you're not a little worried. I mean, Barrios hasn't been very good. Kikuchi, who goes tonight in Boston, I mean, he's been fair to Midland. I mean, are we just going to chalk that up to a short spring, Shi?
I just think in general, you have to be wary of making too much of April, and especially now because of this type of spring, right? Like guys didn't get their usual workload. They like to, the Blue Jays have done in recent years is they build their starters up to 100 pitches. They taper back in the outing after that, and then allow them to sort of springboard into the season strong. And they didn't have a chance to do anything remotely close to that, right? The first time they might have been approaching 100 pitches is in first week of the season. So I just think there's just so much that's abnormal right now that you need to be cautious of putting too much into what you've seen. Now, if you're the Blue Jays, did you want to have, Jose Barrios go out in that first game and look like that? No. But he looked much stronger in his second outing against the Yankees. Kevin Gausman, I think has been solid. Hasn't been spectacular, but has been solid. And you can look at that and say, okay, that's clearly going to get better. with Manoah, it's, the Blue Jays just like stay right there.
Yeah.
And, I think Kikuchi, if you look at, that first inning in New York was concerning. And then he was a lot better as second inning on. And you can say, well, there's still some stuff with pitch mix there. And maybe, a little bit of arm strength that's going to come, and that's going to stabilize. So, if you're going to sort of take the long view to it, I would tend to think this is more blip than anything else. But we'll see where the trend line goes.
Yeah, the pitching doesn't concern me as much, and I think for the same reasons as you, that this was not a normal spring. And pitching, especially in the early season, can be really misleading. Some guys get off to a bad start and immediately they've got a 33 ERA, and if that happens in the middle of September, it barely moves the needle. So that doesn't bother me. It's the offense that's a little surprising. I mean, Springer's been fine, good. Vladdy has been, Vladdy, and Collins, has been shocking. I don't expect that to continue, but I think for the most part, the rest of the guys have been below where you would expect them to be.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think Bo's had his moments, and it's sort of a Bo Bichette type of start to the season where there's sort of a lot of all or nothing to it, and that's going to come. I think Lourdes Gurriel Jr., since Teoscar Hernandez went down, has done a really nice job stepping up into the cleanup spot, protecting Vladdy, and that's certainly an important position. But look, Teoscar Hernandez was, had a few big swings before he went down, and that was significant, right? Danny Jansen was off to a nice start, and him going down was significant in multiple ways because really impacts you both offensively and defensively, especially the way that he had begun the year. So I think that is the lineup looks a little bit shorter than the Blue Jays might have expected. Suddenly they're in a position where they're relying on Kirk and Tapia, Zach Collins and Bradley Zimmer in a way that they weren't expecting to.
True.
And that's not a great place to be. But I think as long as they can keep teams from pitching around Guerrero too much, and that's both protection, that's got to be both in front of him and behind him, then I think they're going to be okay.
I don't want to
Tapia,
sound
Collins,
pessimistic because I'm the exact opposite. I'm optimistic because they're 6-4 and they are a scary team to watch play, even without Hernandez in the lineup. It just keeps coming and coming and coming, and you don't know where it's going to come from. But these guys can hit, and the bullpen, generally speaking, has been pretty good. A couple of poor performances, but generally speaking, they've been pretty good, and at a time when you really need them. So I just want to reiterate, I'm not negative. I'm actually positive because I know that this team is going to play better.
Well, I think the one thing though is that, and you mentioned their names, Shi, but we spent a month talking about how great the Jays are going to be, and Tapia wasn't here, and when Collins and Zimmer weren't mentioned, and so and all of a sudden you see them in the lineup, and it might be for the hardcore fan a little disconcerting that, hold on, where was this great lineup minus the injuries? Where was this great lineup that we heard so much about? That's the one thing I think that people might have to be concerned about.
Yeah, I also, a 10-game sample size is sort of irrelevant, right?
Sure,
you can't sort of make too many judgments off it. And I think that there's some objective explanations as to why, things aren't clicking perfectly, right? Like you saw, so let's take the Rangers series, and I understand that this is the Texas Rangers, and we're not going to, but we have to understand what level of pitching we're talking about. But at that point in time, they were deep. Danny Jansen was among those helping turn over the bottom of the lineup and set the table for the top. And when that's happening, then this lineup is peaking. That's when it can really do its damage. And over the weekend against Oakland, there just wasn't a lot of down lineup pressure. And that means the top of the lineup guys are often coming up with the bases empty, and that that they're not at their peak danger, at their most dangerous under that scenario. So, I think you can sort of look at it and say, this is why it's happened. The Yankees have some good pitching. I know there's it's off maligned, but Severino was very good against them. They have their bullpen is still about as good as any in baseball. So, I think you can look at it and say, okay, well, this is why it's happened. And, I don't see any reason to be sort of concerned, but, if Teoscar Hernandez is, closer to 6 to 8 weeks, as opposed to say, 3 to 4, that becomes a little bit tougher to cover. And then if, Danny Jansen is going to be out for a while, well, now you're leaning on Collins and Kirk and Heineman a little bit more than you would like to. And, that becomes a problem. And then, if Biggio doesn't correct, well, that's another concern. So, there's certainly some things to keep an eye on, but I think we have to sort of remember it's 10 games at the start of the season. It's tough to draw any sort of conclusion at this point.
Well, let's talk about some of the individuals. And we mentioned Hyun-Jin Ryu put on the DL after 2 subpar starts, let's just say. Is he hurt, or are they looking for to try and give him time to retool? What do you know?
Well, I mean, what I was told is that he definitely felt something warming up on, when was that? The Saturday, and he tried to pitch through it. And I think if you look at, the numbers, they suggest to you that something wasn't right. There's a noticeable dip in velocity, especially he was down, I think, 3.5 miles an hour on his curveball. And, that's a pitch, if you're not feeling right in your forearm elbow area, that, you put a lot of torque on that joint when you're throwing that pitch. It would make sense that he's not finishing it properly if he doesn't, if he's feeling some discomfort there. You factor in that he's a command guy, that's really his bread and butter, and he's not able to spot the ball the way he usually does. That's another telltale sign that something isn't right physically. So, I don't think this is one of those, your forearm suddenly hurts kind of thing. I think there's definitely something there. The question that I haven't gotten an answer to yet is, as we speak here Tuesday afternoon, is that, what did that MRI show, but beyond the swelling, the inflammation? Is there something more significant there, or is this maybe just a bit of overuse at the beginning of the season? So, I think that's really the key question when it comes to Ryu. And, the Blue Jays understand that with him, if he's not feeling right, it's going to be hard for him to be at his best. Some pitchers can sort of grind through it because they don't have to be as precise, and they can stuff their way through some things. That's not quite there for you. He's got to be there with his command. And that's when he can be at his sharpest. He's got to be able to get every ounce of velocity they can pull out of his body. And if he doesn't have those two things, it's going to be a bit of a problem.
Well, he also, it should be pointed out, did not finish the year well last year.
Right.
And one wonders if there's any kind of carryover there. And I doubt that it could be an injury. It could have been something that he did last fall that impacted him in September and now has reemerged here. But that's less likely than the alternative, which is he's getting a little older and maybe losing some stuff.
Yeah. I think you look back at his 10 starts last year, the final 10 starts, it was a really difficult stretch for him. But even within that, there were outings that were very, very good. There was the one in New York where it was 6 or 7 shutout innings. That was a big win and a big series for the Blue Jays. So there were fluctuations even then in sort of his stuff. And, it could be that he was feeling some things and trying to get through it at that point in time, and, trying to work through the mechanics of whatever he was feeling at that point to try and, utilize his stuff as best as he could. And then you get in the off season, he's another guy I look to sort of the quick spring. He had a weird buildup, right? He spent some time with his former team in South Korea, working out with them, getting ready, had a bit of a delay getting over here, had a down period. Then all of a sudden he had to ratchet up pretty fast. Because the Blue Jays were trying to hide him from the Yankees, he ended up pitching in minor league games. So he just had this very unusual setup. And, we're almost at the point in time where if you're in a normal spring training, you're a pitcher, you go through, a bit of a dead arm phase where sort of there's just nothing there. And so maybe he tried to do a little too much too quickly, and that caught up with him. So I just think there are a lot of possible explanations right now that don't necessarily mean what happened last year is carrying over. But I mean, the numbers are the numbers and the trend line is the trend line. So, I don't think you can discount it either. I just think we need to get a bit more information and, to be fair to him, he needs a little bit more runway to figure out precisely what the Blue Jays are dealing with here.
And Barrios, concern there? I mean, we talked about it briefly, but even his second outing for me, I didn't feel as confident, obviously, as you are.
Yeah, I mean, it looked really good for 4 innings, and there were the couple of homers in that 5th. Again, good lineup, good team. It's probably going to happen, but I think you like what you saw over the first 4 innings and the way that he was throwing the ball. And the track record is the track record with Barrios, right? He's not going to suddenly fall off the cliff after being who he's been for such a long period of time. So, if he has a rough one at Fenway tomorrow, maybe at that point saying, okay, 2 or 3 where it hasn't been right, but there's still stuff there. The velocity's still there. I just think he's, for some of the things that I've heard about him is just, you might have been a little too amped up, and then, maybe he's still just trying to find that right energy level and that timing and the rhythm. And, again, that's something that can certainly happen in the early part of the season.
I'm a big Espinal. Sorry, John, go ahead.
You'll go. I was just saying, it should be noted that there's nobody in the American League with more than 6 victories anyway. So it sounds like everybody's going through the same thing, right?
To some degree, and there's some parity. And look, I mean, anybody thinking that this was going to be just like a cakewalk for the Blue Jays and just going to, they're going to play 600 and something baseball all season long without any blips. I mean, that's just not how baseball works, right? It's going to be tough. The Yankees are good. The Red Sox are good. The Rays are still good, right? They're going to be in about what did one of the Fangraphs projections have? Had all 4 teams at 88 wins. This division's still going to be a meat grinder. So, there are going to be some ups and downs. It's going to ultimately, as it always does, end up being, whose depth plays out best and, who executes in the moment. So, I think the fact that, they're 6-4 going through what they've gone through, you're not doing cartwheels, but you're like, that's fine.
Yeah, I agree. I've long been a supporter of Espinal. I liked the way he played third base last year. I liked the way he hit the ball. I'm big on. I still look at batting average as a significant number. It doesn't have to go out of the ballpark, and he's not going to make it go out, even though he's stronger this year. If he gets 5-6 home runs this year, I think that'll be about his limit. But defensively, he is very, very sound and puts the bat on the ball as often as not. I thought he would win the second base job in time. I thought Biggio was going to get an opportunity, especially against right-handed pitching. But we haven't seen that every time. And Biggio still does not have a hit this year. He's played second base, he's played first base, he's played the outfield. He's a useful player, but what is his problem right now? Have you looked at it, analyzed it, tried to figure out what it is that he's doing?
Well, it's been for not just now, it's a little bit last year too. It's just he's not doing damage on fastballs in the zone, right? It's still a good at bat. He's still tenacious. He's still got good judgment. He's generally going to make good swing decisions. He's just not getting a lot of damage when he's got the opportunity to do that. And this is an important time for him, and the Blue Jays do need him. He's got a chance to be a really important part of this team, because if he can be something like the offensive performer that he was in 2020, having that from the left side on a team that's so right-handed heavy is vital, right? And so there are going to be days where you're just going to want Espinal's defense there regardless of the situation at second base. But there are times against some of the tougher right-handed pitching that you're going to want Biggio and what he brings to the table. but he's got to get there, and he's got to win that back. And so, the longer that he doesn't perform, and the steadier that Espinal can be, and Bob, he's always been a guy the Blue Jays felt had good gap power. He might be able to increase that a little bit with the extra bulk that he's put on. I think we've seen some of his best exit velocities in the majors so far this season out of him. So it's certainly a good early sign. But if he keeps this up, he's going to kind of take some of that playing time. I think, and this isn't meant to be a knock to Espinal, but I think part of which we've seen from the way his numbers have played is that he's often been used in optimal situations, right? And I think when you do that, you often get the best of a guy. And that if is he going to be the same player if he's playing on an everyday basis, and he's facing some of the tougher matchups that he's avoided to this point? I think that's a bit of an open question. So for those reasons, I do think that Biggio is really, really vital. But if he doesn't start showing a bit more, then his grip on a roster spot is going to start loosening, because the Blue Jays may think he may need a timeout at Buffalo to get himself right.
Yeah, well, and you would have hoped he would be past that by this point in his career. And I think at the beginning of the year, you could make the case that because he's a left-handed hitter, facing a lot of right-handed pitching, he was going to get the lion's share of the work at second base. Now, I'm not saying he was going to play 120 games or anything like that, but he was probably going to get more opportunity at second base. Right now, based on performance, both defensively and offensively, Espinal to me is going to get 2/3 of the starts at second base, unless Biggio turns it around offensively. We know he's sound defensively. We know he has that added value of being able to play a multitude of positions. He hasn't looked out. He didn't look out of place at first base. Mind you, it's hard to, I always say anybody can play first base, but doesn't look out of place in the outfield. But you got to be able to hit. You got to be able to put the bat on the ball, and he hasn't been able to do that.
So that does bring up a really important question. Versatility, yes, but how are you going to get? How are you going to get Biggio enough times at the plate if he's not playing regularly? You're not going to make him the DH, I don't think, are you?
Well, I think right now the way they're set up, especially with Hernandez out, is that there are going to be some opportunities for him. But you mentioned Zach Collins earlier, and Collins has been a bit of a revelation. You don't want to put too much in a small sample size, but
exactly.
If you happen to get the 2-3 best weeks that he's going to have this year right now, you've got to ride that out and see how long that it takes you before it normalizes. It could be a challenge, but I think we're I think we're still also a little bit premature on Biggio too. He's going to get some more run. He needs a bit more runway. You're still seeing him work at bats. You're still seeing him get on base a little bit. And, sometimes it's going to take a guy a few at bats. And, I don't think you can make a definitive judgment on 15-20. That's not necessarily a fair sample. But I think if you're the Blue Jays, you're like, well, we need to see some exit velo here. We need to see something that suggests to us that the turnaround is coming, and there hasn't been a lot of that to this point.
Shi Davidi is with us from Sportsnet. We'll continue to talk about baseball, specifically the Blue Jays, after these messages. McCowan and Shannon and Shi Davidi of Sportsnet. Matt Chapman defensively has been an eye-opener. I have to confess that although I saw Chapman play, obviously, all the years that he was in Oakland, and saw them every time they played the Blue Jays, didn't pay that much attention. I knew that this was a guy who could hit some home runs, but I had no real idea of defensively how good he was. Everybody talked about it before when the Blue Jays acquired him, and I was prepared to see it. But he's spectacular defensively at third base, isn't he?
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. And, what I think this is sort of the first time I've had a chance to, watch him on an extended basis.
Me too.
Just from a positional standpoint, and the way that he sets up and how that allows you to do different things with your infield defense because he plays deeper and he can range in different ways. And, I remember digging into some numbers when the Blue Jays acquired him. And if you're looking at outs above average to the left, and specifically among third basemen last year, the Blue Jays were a -5 at third base on balls to the left side of the defender, right? Chapman on his own was a +3. So that's an 8-out swing between those two areas. And, who's that impacting the most, right? That's putting extra pressure on Bo Bichette if he has to shade to his right to cover some of that gap at third base in the 5-6 hole. And now you see him playing a bit more up the middle. You see him being a little bit more confident on balls to his left because he's not having to dig quite as far. The spin-off effects of having his defense there, aside from just what he's doing individually, but the way that he's making it easier. You look at the way that he throws the balls to second baseman on 5-4 plays. It's right in the chest every time, giving the guy a chance to make a turn. There are just so many little things that he does that are making a difference already. And that, especially when you think about what that's going to do over time as the opportunities accumulate, it's a massive difference.
Well, and he has been compared to Donaldson, who also came to the Blue Jays from Oakland, and not taking anything away from Donaldson. But Donaldson made some spectacular plays that stuck in your head.
Mm-hmm.
What impresses me over 10 games of watching Chapman and a few spring training games is the routine stuff. As you said, he makes everything look pretty easy. And when he winds up to throw the ball, whether it's to second or to first, it is a perfect throw almost every time.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, absolutely. And he's got a big arm. He's got an arm that can play the
bigger than
outfield.
big, bigger than big. It's huge.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the one thing.
It's a laser.
Everybody said he had good arm strength. He has great arm strength. It's unbelievable.
I don't think I've seen anybody throw the ball harder or more accurately from third base ever. I'm just not positive I've ever seen it.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're looking at it from a Blue Jays perspective, you're probably going back to Scott Rowland for something, similar to that. And the one thing, it's kind of interesting when the Blue Jays had Donaldson, and they acquired him, and then they got Reyes too. They picked up Justin Smoke as well, and at the time it wasn't clear how Smoke was going to fit things. But one of the things that they were attracted to by him was his wingspan, and they had done a bit of a study in terms of how his wingspan would help reduce the throwing errors for Reyes and Donaldson, because they were a little bit erratic in terms of how they got balls to the bag. With Chapman, like, you don't need that, right? Because Vlad's obviously been very good in terms of scooping balls and things of that nature. But he's not as big as Smoke was in terms of wingspan. But I mean, almost everything's right to the chest with Chapman, and that it's just a non-factor. So certainly Donaldson had a similar athleticism and had that similar spectacular range, but he wasn't as accurate with throwing as Chapman is.
So I guess it depends on your point of view, but the guy's as good a defensive third baseman as I think there is in baseball. And he will help the pitchers. He will help this team, as you pointed out statistically. The question is offense, and whether he's fully recovered from the surgery of a couple of years ago, and whether he can hit home runs. We know he's got power. He's demonstrated that power. But he doesn't make contact often enough, in my opinion. Is it? If you've seen more of him, I assume, than I have. Is he a low 200s hitter? Is he a mid 200s hitter? What do you expect him to be by the end of the year?
Well, I mean, that's sort of what he's been, right? In that sort of low to mid 200s with a good on base percentage and some pretty good pop. That's what he's been, and I think if he's that, if he's that sort of 800 sort of OPS player where, he's getting on base and he's doing some damage on pitches. And even if there's some high strikeouts, that's fine because of what's around him in the lineup. I think he's been sort of batting. I mean, he's up a little bit now because Hernandez is out, but if he's in that, 5, 6, 7 range, that's completely fine. So that's a great skill set for there. He doesn't need to be there to create necessarily. He just needs to be there to leverage what others are doing periodically. So, I think offensively he's fine. He's not going to be Josh Donaldson, but I think we'll see more home runs. Think about the balls that disappeared into the marine layer in the sky in Oakland. That's not going to be a factor in the American League East. So I think we'll see some of that play up. And if he's as long as he's walking, as long as he's still getting on base that way, and in situations he's getting back to ball, I think Blue Jays will be more than happy with that, given how much of a difference he's going to make defensively.
One of the other issues in the game, to move around a bit, is the shift, which may, we don't know, become illegal next year. There's plenty of talk about that. And the Toronto Blue Jays, as has been noted by the TV broadcasters through the first 10 games, are shifting more than any team in baseball.
Yes.
And more dramatically than any team in baseball. Let's discuss this. Number one, why do you think, or do you know why they have increased their shifting from last year? Because it seems clear that they have. Virtually every hitter is shift on.
Yeah, I mean the data certainly supports that, and I haven't checked it in a few days, so I'm not sure if they're still number one in baseball, but they were at a certain point, and they've been more aggressive with the 4-man outfield than we've seen them in the past as well. I think there are probably a couple things. Every year their data is improving, and the confidence in their numbers are improving. So I would say that they've probably got better data. They've also expanded their coaching staff now, where they've got more resources available to think about, to break down numbers, break down trends, and figure out what's going to be the best matchups. And I think there have been a few occasions where pitchers have maybe not been thrilled with the shifting, or wondering if they're maybe doing it a little too much. But I think with shifts, if the pitcher is able to execute the game plan, and the players are positioned in the right spots, it's gonna work, right? That's why teams do it. What happens is it reduces your margin for error, and sometimes an opposing hitter is just going to come out of the approach and change their swing and say, I'm just going to take what's given to me. I'm going to make the most of that. And in general, you want that to happen. Or at least you're willing to swallow that, because you've forced them to come out of their strengths and to beat you with their weakness. So if sometimes if they do that, you sort of tip your cap. And I think that's sort of the mentality that the Blue Jays have approached this with. But we'll see whether, they get to a point where they think this is too much and are forced to adjust.
Well, here's what I don't understand. There's a lot of things I don't understand, as Shannon will tell you, but, and you've talked to me often enough, but here's the situation. A couple of times guys have gone the opposite way with the shift. There was a bunt single or double. I don't even know what it was. There was a left-handed hitter who poked one the opposite way to where third baseman usually would be. Was an easy base hit. But here's the part I don't understand. If you got a left-handed hitter up, a right-handed pitcher on the mound, everybody is playing on the right side of the diamond. Why are pitchers trying to take throw balls on the outside part of the plate? If you want a guy, if you want a guy to do what he does, and he's a dead pull hitter, throw the ball inside. Mm-hmm. That's a pitch that is almost impossible, unless you cue stick it, to hit it to left field. And yet the Blue Jays seem to consistently, or too often for my liking at least, try and nibble on the outside part of the plate. Hey, want to give me an explanation for that?
Well, I think part of it, on occasion, pitchers are going to miss their spots, right?
Oh, I
So,
get it, but I'm not
you know,
talking about that. I'm talking about when
but-
catchers set up on the outside part of the
That's
plate. I'm
right,
going,
yeah.
what are you doing?
Yeah,
You're encouraging him to go the other way.
And the other thing is that it could be that that's pitch that they've set the hitter up for, right? And it's supposed to be a breaking ball that's going to you know, or a pitch that's going to possibly be strike to ball or something along those lines that maybe doesn't quite get there. So, you know, usually there's going to be a reason for that. And a lot of times, like, you know, the way that sort of we've traditionally thought about how you attack hitters, you know, a lot of that is changing now, because what teams are doing is they're analyzing, you know, swing path versus pitch path, right? So what is a guy's typical bat path versus a guy's typical pitch profile movement? And they're obviously trying to use the two data points to what is the most effective pitch that's going to work in that way. And so, you know, the data may say that even if a ball's on the outside, on the outer edge, that a guy's going to hook that pitch or try to hook that pitch directly into the shift, as opposed to, you know, his bat path won't allow him to, or at least his typical bat path won't allow him to hit the ball to the opposite field and into the hole. At least that's sort of one of the rationales there.
Well, I hear that, but I mean, look at you and I are standing up there, and we got a left-handed dead pull hitter. We're going to move everybody to the left side. I get that. Where am I going to throw the baseball? I'm going to throw everything down and in.
Yeah.
Down and in
You
is
should.
what's going to. I want him to hit it on the ground, and I want him to pull it because I got my entire team over there. I got nobody over in left field. I got nobody on the left side of the infield. I'm going to throw it down and in, and I'll throw it there. I'll throw 20 pitches there if he fouls a bunch off. I'm never going to go up and away. And I know he can roll over that. And I know most pull hitters can't hit that ball to left field. They just can't do it. But why take the chance? And that's part of what I don't understand.
I hear you, but I also think there are times where you just need to change a guy's sight lines too, right? And, you know, if you're pounding him in, and he's cheating inside, you go outer edge, he can't pull the trigger. So in principle, I get what you're saying. You know, I just think it's harder to sort of make a uniform statement without sort of thinking of understanding fully what a specific hitter, what's the rationale for that specific hitter.
Yeah, well, let's deal with the original premise. Do you think the shift should be illegal?
I personally don't. If it's me, I'm saying, okay, you don't like it, then adjust, right? Or hit it over the shift, which is what a lot of hitters have tried to do, right? Rather than try to sort of manipulate their swings to use the opposite field, they're just like, all right, well, you're not going to give me the ground ball base hit. I'm just going to try to hit the ball over the wall. And that's sort of where we're at in baseball right now. So
Where are you, Bob?
I think it's being used too much. What I'm shocked at is the inability of baseball to adjust, or the unwillingness of baseball to adjust.
You mean batters to adjust?
Essentially, but I mean baseball, because I don't believe that. I don't know of any team that has, and maybe there is one, or a manager or a hitting coach who has said, all right, this guy, these teams are all playing four guys on the right side of the infield.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to work with you to keep your bat back and trying to get you to hit some ground balls to the opposite field, because those are base hits. And I know of nobody that's doing that. Now, I'm not saying there isn't. I just don't know of anybody that's doing it. And baseball is, above all else, stubborn as shit. And this is another demonstration to me of that stubbornness. Now, Davidi is itching to say something.
I got a story.
Disagree with me.
No. I'm not. Actually, I'm not. But this is more. There's a couple things going on. So, like, I think that part of it is the swings and approaches that are being taught in the minor leagues, and the fact that, the analytics suggest there isn't as much value over the course of a long season in terms of, getting a few more extra singles versus, trying to pull your everything and yanking the ball over the wall. But I was talking to a player who recently retired, and he was telling me of an incident a few years ago where, the previous night he was up with 2 outs in an inning, and, he hit the ball the other way, got a single. He's batting lower in the lineup, next batter's out, and end of story. This hitter had some power. So he's at the batting cage the next day, and his GM comes up to him and said, "Hey, you got that single the other day. Like, what were you thinking there? Like, were you trying to go the opposite way?" I said, "Yeah, it's like I was trying to start something. Wasn't seeing the guy great, and thought maybe, poke it up, get on base." And he said to him, "Look, in that spot, we're early in the game. We're 2 outs. It's probably going to take 2 to 3 hits to bring you around. Swing for the fences. That single is doing nothing for us. The analytics aren't, the odds of us cashing you in at that point are so low that you're better off just trying to hit the ball over the wall."
Well,
And
that's
so,
a nice theoretical example, Davidi, but the truth of the matter is, and it makes my point.
but that's what, so if you're a player and you're thinking the other way and your GM is telling you that, what are you going to do? Are you
Fire the
going to say,
GM. That's what you do.
well, as a player, you're not firing the GM. As a player, you're saying, I'm going to do what my boss is telling me because I want to stay in the big leagues. And so,
Well, of course,
until organizations decide to make a shift and start teaching it in the minor leagues and have guys come up who can be, obviously not Ichiro, but can manipulate the bat in ways that Ichiro used to be able to, or are seeking to become a complete hitter, then you're not solving anything. So you're solving for symptoms as opposed to cause.
Well,
the interesting thing for me is that if you want to stay in Major League Baseball, right now the art of hitting the long ball is the way to stay in Major League Baseball.
Mm-hmm. And the way to get paid.
15 years ago, that's right. 15 years ago was the ability to spray the ball, the ability to move the ball around to avoid the shift. And
that's the other piece. You have to reward what you want to. You reward what you want to see.
Yeah, and then that's just a. So why if you're going to live with the long ball as the key to the success in baseball, why even worry about the shift? Just put them all in the right, 9 guys on the right field line and let the guy hit the long ball. I mean, goodness gracious.
Well, how many
that's where we're at.
How many dead pull hitters have led the league in batting average, or even been in the top 5 in batting average? I'll bet you could count them on your hands, maybe with your toes. It just doesn't happen. It's guys who make great contact, generally speaking, have bat control. Mm-hmm. And they have more of their hits are towards the middle of the diamond.
But that's why this speaks to.
Sorry.
But this speaks to. I mean, the Triple Crown's importance isn't what it used to be. This speaks, Bob. I remember all last year you were lamenting we don't talk about the Triple Crown very much anymore and how important it was when we were kids, because the game has changed so fundamentally that it's not as important the guy that has the best average in baseball anymore. It's just not important.
Well, I'm stubborn, you know that, and
just like the baseball guys on the other side.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't deny the equations and the mathematics that they use to deduce what to do. I'm not denying that. What I am saying is that it creates opportunity that is not being capitalized on. That's all I'm saying. And look at, you're not going to tell Vladdy or Springer or somebody who is a truly good hitter, or Bo for that matter. You're not going to tell him to go the other way. Truth of the matter is, Vladdy goes the other way a lot, and Bo goes the other way a lot. Springer is more of a dead pull hitter. Am I right?
He's more, but he'll still take hits to the right side. He's more complete. I think the Jays for the most part are pretty good
I agree.
And you know,
Going the other
Teoscar
way.
Hernandez will do some damage the other way. Gurriel will do some damage the other way too. So, you know, I think for the most part, you know, I think that's what makes them so good, right? They're
Sure it
sort of
is.
unicorns in that way. But you know, I think if you're sort of taking it back, the problem is, you know, you are what you reward in the game, right? And so I'll tell you another story about a player, and you know, the coaching staff was super frustrated with him because he came up as a bit of a spray hitter, and then he got to the big leagues, and all he's trying to do is hit home runs. And you know, teams like, why are you trying to hit home runs? And he's like, well, I can get a bunch of singles, but you're not going to pay me for that in arbitration. I got to hit home runs to get paid in arbitration. So I'm going to try to hit home runs. And so, you know, if you take a step back, I mean, I get it. Like, I don't necessarily disagree with his thought process. Like, how are you going to tell a guy, hey, be unselfish and just put up these counting stats because they help in a way, but you're not necessarily going to get rewarded for that. How are you going to tell somebody to do that? And then, you know, when it comes time to get paid in arbitration, it'll be like, well, you don't hit for power, so you only get this much. So I think there's so many fundamental layers to why this happens. So it's not being taught. You know, the analytics say this pays off more. You know, teams are valuing that, and then players understand that that's how they're going to get compensated. You know, you've got a number of pieces that you need to shift in order to make a substantial change.
Well, that's stupid baseball players who think they can hit 40 home runs and get paid for those 40 home runs, even though they hit 200. And there's almost nobody that does that. And, you know, the Vladdies
you'll
are
get
going to
paid more. You'll get paid more for hitting 15 home runs than batting 280. Right. And that's what the arbitration system rewards.
Well, and we better change the arbitration system while we're changing the.
Oh no, we already
Good luck with
negotiated that. We just went through 100 days of labor war to try to solve that, and nothing happened. Nothing happened. I'm still trying to figure out pitching plane versus swing plane. I'm trying to, the physics and the science of this game is, yeah. What happened to just getting up and hitting the ball, right?
Right. Well.
It's still there. It's just not considered as interesting as all the other
that's
metrics.
right.
Well,
that's
I mean,
right. They got too much time on their hand.
That's how you're getting into better evaluation of players, right? Yeah. And you know, you're not making you're not making the same amount of contractual mistakes as you used to, which is, you know, that one way that the owners have gamed the system. And you know, one of the reasons the players had to kind of really trying to fight to level things off is just because, you know, the way that people are assessed, it's like you go through arbitration getting paid for counting stats, and then you get into free agency and the entire evaluation process of your performance is completely different.
Before we let you go, we haven't talked much about the bullpen. It's been generally pretty good, huh?
Yeah, I mean, you know, Jordan Romano is off to a tremendous start, and you know, I mean, the amount of consistency, I think it's 29 consecutive saves now, you know, as automatic as anybody. It's an incredible stretch for him that, you know, is getting attention, but probably deserves more attention because of how good it is. And someone who I think has been, you know, I don't want to say pleasant surprise, but, you know, Jimmy Garcia didn't have a proper spring training because of visa issues. He came late, didn't get a ton of action. But he's been great. Like I really like the way that he's attacked, and you know, I don't expect him to have a 0 ERA the whole season, but you know, he really gets after guys, and you know, if you're an opposing batter, you have to beat him as opposed to him beating himself.
It is the bullpen is so curious. I've said this many times that you know, you can always find a reliever. They're like pretty girls. There's one coming by every 5 minutes. If you don't like one, go get another one, and you never know what you're going to get. And I expect this bullpen will go through its trials and tribulations, but right now looks pretty good. Davidi, we're glad you feel better. Continue to rest a little bit and enjoy the next few weeks of the baseball season until we bug you again to join us. Thanks, pal.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate it. It's going to be an interesting stretch. So I think we'll probably learn a few things about the team in the next couple of weeks.
I suspect we will. Shi Davidi of Sportsnet. We'll come back after these messages. So our thanks to Shi Davidi for being with us. Cavan and Shannon back with you.
Yeah.
Only about 90 seconds or so to chat. There's not much to say about the Raptors game last night.
No.
They got up to an 11-2 lead, and there was some level. They actually led at the end of the first quarter, but that was about it. And then got steamrolled by Philly. Mind you, they were significantly undermanned last night. They had two guys who played who shouldn't have played, and one guy, the rookie, who couldn't play. And I saw he had his foot in a boot, in a hard boot.
Yeah.
So I'm not optimistic he'll be ready for Wednesday.
Here's the one thing. Here's my one observation. So much of what this Raptor team needs to do is with the guile and expertise and knowledge of Nick Nurse and Fred VanVleet. And neither of these guys, under any circumstances in any game, should lose their cool. I don't care if they're getting mugged at midcourt. They can't lose their cool.
But that's their character. They've been doing it all year. They did it last year. They did it the year before. I don't disagree. I think they're all too emotional.
Those two guys alone have to stay the course. If those two guys lose their cool, then it gives every opportunity for every other player on the team to be less than 100% secure in what they're doing. And that's exactly what happened. And to me, when Freddie turned during a play and started yelling at the ref, they were done. They were done. He's got to keep his cool, man. I don't care if the guy's got knives and guns going at him. He's got to keep his cool. He really does.
It's not in his character, and it's not in Nick Nurse's character. You know, there are guys on the floor who don't lose their cool, but those two do it with every single play. They complain about every single play, and it's just the way it is. So if you're looking for a change come Wednesday or Friday or whenever game 4 is, don't hold your breath.
Game 3, Wednesday. Game 4, Saturday.
Thank you. Well, we'll see how it goes tomorrow. We're going to talk basketball tomorrow, are we?
Richard Deitch. Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll look forward to that. Again, our thanks to Shi Davidi for today. For John Shannon, this is Bob McCown. We'll see you tomorrow. Goodbye, everybody.